So when you think of the Greek god Apollo, what comes to mind? Probably music, right? Prophecy, light. He's basically the poster boy for harmony and reason. But what if I told you that behind that shiny, perfect image, there's a much darker, much more violent side? Today, we're going to peel back the layers on one of the most complicated and fascinating figures in all of mythology. I mean, think about it. A healer and a killer. A musician and a warrior. It just doesn't seem to add up. How could one single god be both? The guy who could cure a plague was also the one who could start one with his bow and arrow. And the master of that beautiful, harmonious lyre, yeah, he could be absolutely ruthless to anyone who dared to challenge him. So, to really get our heads around this, to understand how one deity could be such a walking contradiction, we've got to go right back to the beginning, back to his absolutely wild birth story. All right, let's get into it. A hero's dramatic birth. You see, Apollo's story, it doesn't kick off on some golden throne on Mount Olympus. Oh no, it starts in exile. This is a story about persecution, about survival. Really, it's the origin story of a god who had to fight for his place in the universe from the second he was born. Okay, so here's the family tree. Apollo is the son of Zeus, king of all the gods, and a titaness named Leto. He's also got a twin sister, Artemis, the goddess of the hunt. Now, being the son of Zeus, you'd think he'd have it made, right? Destined for greatness? Well, there's a catch. His mom, Leto, was just one of Zeus's many affairs, and that meant she and her unborn kids were squarely in the crosshairs of Zeus's very powerful, very jealous, and very vengeful wife, Hera. And Hera did not mess around. Her revenge was immediate and incredibly cruel. She put a curse on Leto, saying that no land attached to the earth, no solid ground, could offer her shelter to give birth. Can you imagine? So poor Leto was forced to wander all over the Aegean Sea. And to make things worse, Hera sent a giant, monstrous serpent, the Python, to hunt her down. Just awful. Desperate, in labor, she finally finds a little bit of hope, the barren floating island of Delos. See, because it was floating, it wasn't technically rooted to the earth, so it was the one loophole in Hera's curse. But the ordeal wasn't over, not by a long shot. Hera actually managed to stop the goddess of childbirth from showing up to help. So for nine agonizing days, Leto is in labor, clinging to a sacred palm tree. She finally gives birth to Artemis first. And then, get this, with the help of her own newborn daughter, she gives birth to Apollo. It's just incredible. And the very moment Apollo, the god of light, is born, that floating island of Delos anchors itself to the bottom of the sea, becoming his sacred ground forever. And Apollo was no ordinary baby. The story goes, in the Homeric hymn, that as soon as he tasted nectar and ambrosia, the food of the gods, this infant opens his mouth and says these words, declaring his domains and his divine mission right from the start. Just wow. He's literally minutes old and he's already claiming his purpose. This god was born ready to go. So we've got the dragon and the oracle. This is about forging an identity. Because look, if you're a god born out of that much struggle, you need to make a statement, and you need to do it fast. For young Apollo, that meant forging his own identity. And how was he going to do that? By facing down the very monster that hunted his mother and taking over the most sacred spot in the entire Greek world. Now he sets his sights on this ancient oracle at a place called Python. And we're not just talking about some random cave. This place, which would later become world famous as Delphi, was literally considered the navel, the center of the entire world. But there was a problem. It was guarded by a terrifying beast. Specifically, that same serpent, Python, a monstrous dragon who is a child of the earth goddess herself, Gaia. So what does he do? Step 1, he tracks that massive dragon to its lair on Mount Parnassus. Step 2, armed with that bow, he basically claimed right out of the womb, he slays the beast with a volley of arrows. And step 3, he claims the sacred site for himself. This was his first big moment, his first heroic act, and it was huge. It was personal revenge for what happened to his mom, for sure, but it was also way bigger than that. It was a cosmic power move. And just like that, with that one epic victory, he gets one of his most famous titles, Pythian Apollo. He wasn't just son of Zeus anymore. No. Now he was a monster slayer. He was a champion for the new guard, the Olympians, taking over from the old, earthy, primordial forces. And you really can't overstate how huge this was. By taking Delphi, Apollo basically became the guy for prophecies, the ultimate authority. You had kings, generals, even regular people traveling from all over the known world just to ask a question to his priestess, the Pythia. And her super cryptic answers? They shaped history. They influenced the outcome of wars, decided where new cities would be built. Everything. Okay, so now we get to the really interesting part. The god of contradictions. The light and the shadow. Because for all this talk about light and reason and order, Apollo's true nature is all about a deep and often pretty brutal duality. If you really want to understand him, you have to look at the shadow that was always right there with his brilliant light. Yeah, on the surface, Apollo seems to be this perfect, rational ideal, but that quest for perfection, it could be absolutely merciless. None of his powers were simple, one-sided things. Every single one of them had a terrifying flip side, a power to create, but also a power to destroy. Let's just look at the evidence here. Take health. He's the god of healing. His son Asclepius literally becomes the god of medicine. Great, right? But he's also the god of plague. He's the one who shot plague arrows into the Greek camp during the Trojan War. Okay, what about music? He's the undisputed master of the lyre, the picture of harmony. But when a satyr named Marsyas thought he was better and challenged him to a music contest, Apollo won and then had him flayed alive for being so arrogant. And then there's love. Sure, he could be a devoted partner, but man, his love life was a trail of tears. His romantic pursuits almost always ended in tragedy, death, or someone getting turned into a plant. And I mean, these love stories are just heartbreaking. He relentlessly chased after a nymph named Daphne who wanted nothing to do with him. She was so desperate to get away that she begged her father for help, and he turned her into a laurel tree. And Apollo's response? He just made the laurel tree his sacred plant. Then there was Hyacinthus, a Spartan prince he truly loved. But one day, while they're throwing the discus, a jealous wind god blows it off course and it strikes and kills Hyacinthus. Absolutely tragic. Apollo, overcome with grief, creates the hyacinth flower from his lover's spilled blood. So, with all that darkness, how do we get to his legacy? Well, despite everything we just talked about, Apollo's main job, in the minds of the ancient Greeks, was to be a civilizing force. He was the one who brought order from chaos, the one who set up the rules for a fair, rational society. Think about it. Through his oracle at Delphi, he wasn't just telling fortunes. He was handing down laws, giving the blueprints for new colonies. In fact, his name might even come from the word apella, which was the Greek term for a political assembly. He was seen as the divine source for everything that holds a society together: law, government, reason, art, poetry, the whole shebang. You know you've made it when your name becomes an adjective, right? His influence was so massive that the philosopher Nietzsche eventually coined the term Apollonian. He used it to describe that part of us, that human impulse that strives for order, for reason, for harmony. And he put it in direct contrast with the Dionysian. That's the wild, chaotic, emotional side of us. What's really cool is that the ancient Greeks kind of already knew this. They believed you needed both. A full life had to have the structure of Apollo and the passionate chaos of Dionysus. And in terms of looks, Apollo was perfection. Seriously, in Greek art, he's always shown as a Kouros. That's the term for an eternally youthful, beardless, athletic guy. And this wasn't just because they thought it looked good, it was the visual representation of the Hellenic ideal: vitality, strength, and never getting old. His impact on art is just staggering. Take this statue, the Apollo Belvedere. It was found, again, during the Renaissance, and for hundreds of years, people looked at it and said, that's it. That's the most perfect piece of art ever made. It literally became the definition of classical perfection, and it shaped what the Western world considered beautiful for centuries. But maybe his most concrete, lasting legacy is in medicine. Remember his son, Asclepius? He became the god of medicine, and his symbol, that rod with a snake wrapped around it, well, that's the rod of Asclepius. You still see it used as a symbol for medicine today, all over the world. It's a straight line connecting this ancient god of healing directly to your doctor's office. And that brings us right back to where we started, to that central paradox. On one hand, Apollo is the symbol of civilization itself, that drive for order, for knowledge, for law. But his own story is filled with violence, cruelty, and destruction, all in the name of that order. So it leaves us with a pretty deep question, doesn't it? Is that tension at the very heart of Apollo's character? Is that just what civilization is? Or is his story a timeless warning? A warning that pure, cold reason, without any compassion, can be just as dangerous as the chaos it's trying to control.